Imagine this. A remote farmstead, covered in snow, totally cut off, deep in the Bavarian countryside. Germany, 1922. Picture that silence, really deep, chilling, quiet, maybe just the wind, or maybe the sound of footsteps that just shouldn't be there. This isn't some spooky story, though it sounds like one. It's the real setting for, well, one of history's most baffling unsolved murders. 6 people, a whole family, plus their brand new maid killed brutally. No witnesses, no obvious motive, nothing. And the killer vanished, just gone. Left behind this legacy of questions that honestly still echo today, 100 years later. What makes this case really haunting, and what we're going to dive into today, are these weird things that happen beforehand, like premonitions almost. We're talking strange footprints in the snow, right? Leading to the house, but weirdly, no tracks leading away. And then there were noises from the attic, footsteps, shuffling sounds, like someone was living up there, hiding. And get this, the maid before the last one, she quit. Said the place was haunted, just days before the murders. But the detail that really gets me, the one that sends shivers down your spine, is the evidence suggesting the killer or killers didn't just flee. Our sources suggest they might have actually stayed on the farm for days, feeding the animals, eating meals, living there with the bodies. So today, we're taking a deep dive into one of Germany's absolute coldest cases, the Hinterkaifeck murders. We're going to explore the whole story, from those strange signs beforehand, the brutal crime itself, the investigation that kind of fell apart, and all the theories that people have come up with trying to figure it out. It's not just about the facts, though. It's about, well, the dark side of things, and how easily everything can just be overwhelmed.
Exactly. And that's why it still grabs us.
Yeah.
Our dive into the sources, it really shows Hinterkaifeck as this grim example of, well, the failure of that critical golden hour in crime scene investigation. Those first hours were absolutely crucial, and the response it squandered so many chances. Basic stuff, really, that we expect now. It's a powerful look at how limited forensics were back then, combined with that rural isolation and, the local social stuff. It all just let the killer slip away. And it leaves this wound, right? One that never really closes. It challenges how we think about justice and what we learn when we just can't find the answers.
The isolated world of Hinterkaifeck and its troubling prelude.
Okay, so let's really set the scene. Hinterkaifeck itself, it wasn't even really a village, just this lone farm, way out there. About 70 kilometers north of Munich, sort of between Ingolstadt and Schrobenhausen. You got to picture 1922 Bavaria. Travel was tough, muddy tracks, horse and cart stuff. The nearest actual village, Grobern, was a fair walk away. So Hinterkaifeck was like its own little island, surrounded by forest. Really self-sufficient, but also incredibly vulnerable. And that isolation is absolutely key to understanding the whole story.
It really is. You can't overstate how cut off they were.
So living on this isolated farm in 1922 was the Gruber-Gabriel family. We need to know who they were, because their lives, their reputations, it's all tied up in this. First, there was Andreas Gruber, 63, the patriarch. Bit of a contradiction, it seems. Known as a good farmer, hardworking, really, really frugal, like extremely careful with money. Neighbors respected his farming skills, sure, but he was also seen as pretty reclusive, grumpy maybe, quick-tempered. Had some strained relationships, apparently. Arguments with neighbors, even a lawsuit over land with Lorenz Schlittenbauer, remember that name? And that frugality, it led to rumors, that he had cash stashed away on the farm somewhere, which of course feeds into potential robbery motives later on.
Right. Andreas' whole persona sets a specific tone.
Yeah.
And then you have Cecilia Gruber, his wife, 72, the matriarch. She mostly handled the house, very religious by all accounts. People saw her as more of a stabilizing force, maybe a bit of a mediator between Andreas and the outside world. Known for cooking, apparently. Shared recipes at church. That provides a little bit of a normal connection for a family that, well, had some...
There's their daughter, Victoria Gabriel, 35, widowed. Her husband, Carl, died in World War I back in 1914. So she'd moved back home with her kids. She worked hard on the farm alongside her father, raising 2 young children. Quite a load, I'd imagine. And she had this beautiful singing voice, sang in the church choir. A little glimpse of something different in her life, But here's where it gets really dark. There are rumors, persistent ones, in the community. Whispers, maybe not even whispers, about Victoria being in an incestuous relationship with her father, Andreas.
And those rumors, they're crucial. They connect directly to that isolation we talked about. And yeah, potential motives. A scandal like that, even if just suspected, would have pushed them even further away from the community, created this intense hidden pressure inside the farm. Rural Bavaria back then, reputation was everything. So those allegations would have been devastating, driving secrets deeper. You can feel the tension just thinking about it.
Then the children.
Yeah.
Cecilia Gabriel, Victoria's daughter, 7 years old, named after her grandmother. People said she was bright, did well in school. Curious kid, apparently. like helping out on the farm, especially with the animals. Her death,
Mm-hmm.
especially the part about her maybe surviving for hours, it's just gut-wrenching.
Awful. Just awful. Yeah.
And the youngest, Joseph Gabriel, only 2 years old. And he was right at the center of those terrible rumors. A lot of people in the village openly speculated that, well, that Andreas Gruber might have been his father. Through that alleged relationship with Victoria, these rumors, just hanging over the family, must have been terrible, made them even more isolated. Despite all that darkness, though, people describe Joseph as just a happy little toddler, loved by his mom and sister.
And then Maria Baumgartner, 44, the new maid. Her story is just unbelievably tragic. She'd only been there for hours when it all happened, just hours. Seems like she'd lived a simple life before, worked similar jobs, known to be reliable, discreet. Probably why the Grubers hired her, wanting privacy. The sheer awful timing of it. Her first day, a new start, ending like that. It just underscores the brutality. Yeah, these lives, they paint this picture of rural life, right? Strong ties sometimes, but also how isolation and scandal could just endanger a whole family.
Okay, now let's get to the really chilling part, the stuff that happened before the murders. It's like the farm itself was sending out warnings. It started in late February 1922. Andreas Gruber, the farmer, he noticed something odd. Unfamiliar footprints in the snow around the house. And here's the really weird part. The tracks came from the woods right up to the farmhouse door. But no tracks leading away. None at all. So where did this person go? Did they vanish? Or were they hiding somewhere? On the property. Andreas told neighbors about it. Sounded baffled, maybe a bit uneasy even for him.
Creepy. Just fundamentally creepy.
Yeah, and adding to that feeling, they found a newspaper, a Munich newspaper, on their property. Nobody in the family bought it, didn't subscribe. How did it get there? Who left it? Why? Just more questions piling up. Made things tense, you'd imagine. Then, early March, things got even weirder. House keys went missing, just vanished from inside the house. Made them feel even more exposed, right? And then the noises started. Footsteps coming from the attic at night. Not just creaks, but distinct sounds, like someone walking around up there. Andreas, apparently, he tried to brush it off at first. Said it was probably local kids messing around trying to spook him. But looking back, that dismissal, it's just heartbreaking, isn't it? Underestimating the danger. Maybe because they were so used to being alone out there.
It really paints a picture of the slow burn psychological pressure, doesn't it? Not just one thing, but this series of odd, unsettling events. Anyone would be on edge.
Man.
Andreas dismissing it. Maybe that was his way of coping, you know? But it was a fatal misjudgment. And the most telling detail, March 30th, 1922, the previous maid, Crescens Riker, she quits. Outright. Her reason. She said the house was haunted. Explicitly. This wasn't family drama. This was an outsider saying something is deeply wrong here. And then the very next day, March 31st, Maria Baumgartner arrives for her first day, ready for a new job. Later that same day, everyone at Hinterkaifeck was murdered. That timing. It's just unbelievable, horrific.
The grim discovery and the horrific crime scene.
And the horror just sat there hidden for days. Because the farm was so isolated, people didn't notice right away. It wasn't until early April, maybe the 1st to the 4th, that neighbors started thinking, something's not right. Little things, you know, no smoke from the chimney. That's a big sign in a rural place. And young Cecilia Gabriel, the little girl, she didn't show up for school day after day, which was really unusual for her and for the family. Nobody had seen any of them since Friday, March 31st.
Right, the routine was broken. That's often the first sign in these isolated settings.
Exactly. So after a few days of silence, neighbors got worried. On April 4th, Loren Schlittenbauer, the neighbor with the land dispute, who later becomes a suspect, he led a small group over to the farm. Him, his son, a farmhand, maybe a couple others. They went to check things out, carefully approached the silent farm, and what they found, well, it cemented Hinterkaifeck in true crime history forever. The place was a slaughterhouse. All 6 people brutally murdered, bodies hidden in the barn in the house, just unimaginable horror for that small community to stumble upon.
The scene itself spoke of just, pure, cold brutality. The investigation, limited as it was back then, quickly honed in on the murder weapon. A mattock, that heavy pickaxe-like farm tool, found right there, that immediately suggests extreme violence, blunt force trauma, a frenzied attack maybe, very personal. Based on where the bodies were, the wounds, investigators tried to piece together what happened. It's still a bit speculative, the exact order, but the general idea. They think the killer, or killers, lured Andreas, Cecilia Sr., Victoria, and the older Cecilia into the barn, one by one. That methodical approach is chilling. It suggests planning. Maybe someone they knew, someone who wouldn't raise the alarm immediately. Getting 4 adults into the barn like that takes some serious cunning, or trust.
Yeah, it's terrifying to think about. And it was in the barn where those first 4 were killed. With the mattock, viciously. But here's where it gets almost unbearable. The evidence, even back then, suggested that little Cecilia, the 7-year-old, she might have survived the initial attack. For hours, they found evidence suggesting she might have torn out clumps of her own hair in agony or terror or both. Imagine that poor child alone, hurt in the dark, dying slowly. It adds this layer of suffering that's just hard to comprehend. After the barn, the killer went into the house. Little 2-year-old Joseph, killed in his cot, defenseless, and Maria Baumgartner, the new maid, just hours on the job. She was the last one killed. Maybe she heard something. Well, to investigate. Just tragic, awful timing, her first day.
And the most disturbing part, really the detail that haunts everyone who looks into this case, is the evidence that the killer stayed for days after the murders. Witnesses later reported seeing smoke from the chimney. Someone lit fires, kept the house warm. The cows in the barn, they were fed. Someone did the farm chores. And food from the kitchen. It had been eaten. Meals prepared. Think about the psychology of that. The sheer audacity, the composure to maintain the farm routine after that, living alongside the victims. It suggests this chilling detachment, maybe even a bizarre sense of ownership over the place they just violated. It's not just hiding, it's occupying. That's what makes Hinterkaifeck stand out so much.
Liz intertwined with scandal.
Profiling the victims. Let's try to understand the people involved a bit better. Their stories, their reputations, the secrets. It's all part of the puzzle, right? Andreas Gruber, 63. The patriarch. We know he was seen as reclusive, maybe difficult, strained relationships with neighbors, land disputes, but also respected for being a good farmer, diligent, and very, very frugal.
Yeah, that frugality is key, like you said. The rumors about hitting cash, common back then, maybe? But it definitely put a target on it in some people's minds, theory-wise. Even if the crime scene later made robbery seem unlikely as the main motive, that reputation stuck. It's one of those details that might be a red herring, you know?
Right. Then his wife, Cecilia Gruber, 72. More the household manager, very religious. It seemed like she tried to smooth things over sometimes, be the mediator. Known for her cooking in the community, that little connection.
A bit of normalcy, yeah.
Victoria Gabriel, 35.
Yeah.
The widowed daughter. Back home after her husband died in the war, raising her kids, working the farm. A tough situation. And that singing voice in the choir, a little touch of something else in her life. But then those rumors, the incest accusations involving her father, Andreas, openly discussed in the area, apparently, just hanging over them.
And those rumors are just, they're so significant, aren't they? That connection to the isolation, the potential motive, it's impossible to ignore. It creates this intense, secretive atmosphere in that kind of society where reputation was everything, devastating, could definitely fuel resentment or a desperate need to silence things, either from outside or maybe even inside.
Then young Cecilia Gabriel, 7 years old. Bright kid, good student, curious, liked animals. Her death, especially how it happened, surviving for a while.
Yeah.
It's just the most heartbreaking part of this whole thing. Loss of potential, pure innocence gone.
Unspeakable.
Little Joseph Gabriel, 2 years old. Right in the middle of the storm, those paternity rumors swirling around him, his very existence possibly a constant reminder of the family's alleged secret, making them even more outcast. But still, just a cheerful little kid, led by his mom and sister.
And finally, Maria Baumgartner, 44. The maid arrived and then gone. Hours later. Seems she was just looking for a steady job. Reliable, discreet, exactly what the Grubers probably wanted. Just caught in the crossfire. Wrong place, absolutely wrong time. The ultimate tragic irony. Yeah, taken together, these lives show you that world, right? Close-knit maybe, but also a place where isolation and scandal could have deadly consequences. The whole web of relationships is critical background.
The flawed investigation and enduring theories.
Okay, let's talk about the investigation, or maybe the lack of a proper one. It's kind of painful, actually. Shows you just how limited things were back then, especially in rural areas. The local police in 1922, they were just not equipped for something like this. Not even close. Training was basic, resources were scarce, and modern forensics pretty much non-existent for them.
Yeah, it was a recipe for disaster, investigation-wise.
Totally. The initial response was slow, messy, and they made some huge mistakes right off the bat. The biggest one, the crime scene contamination. It was rampant. Neighbors, curious onlookers, even Schlittenbauer himself, they were just allowed to wander all over the farm, trampling evidence, touching things, maybe even moving bodies, according to some accounts. Just think about that. No police tape, no perimeter. They basically destroyed the scene before the real investigation could even start. Any potential clues, fingerprints, footprints, fibers just wiped away. It's incredible, really.
It's a textbook example of what not to do. And beyond the contamination, other big errors, like the bodies were buried before a proper, detailed autopsy by a real forensic expert could happen. That limited the physical evidence enormously.
Timing of death, exact injuries, maybe trace evidence,
Right.
all lost.
Wow.
Fingerprinting was barely a thing for them. DNA was science fiction. Hinterkaifeck gets studied now in forensics classes precisely because it shows why those early procedures are so vital. How many clues were just missed?
Yeah, it's frustrating to think about. But even with all that chaos, they did figure out a few things. The murder weapon was almost certainly that Maddock found at the scene. The injuries matched, and they confirmed that the killer stayed for days afterwards, feeding the animals, eating, that incredibly creepy detail. Multiple people saw smoke, noticed the animals were cared for, plus no forced entry, no broken doors or windows, which suggests, well, either the victims knew the killer and let them in, or they were caught completely off guard by someone they didn't see as a threat right away.
That no forced entry point is really telling, isn't it? It leans away from a random break-in. Suggests familiarity or cunning planning. Maybe someone who knew the routine, knew how to get close without causing alarm. It adds that personal, insidious layer. Were they tricked? Did they trust their killer?
Makes you wonder. And over the years, so many theories have popped up. People trying desperately to make sense of it. Let's look at the main ones. One big one. Loren Schlittenbauer, the neighbor. We know he found the bodies, seemed to know right where to look, acted strangely afterwards, according to some reports, even reportedly dug up Maria's body later. Very odd. Plus, he had that land dispute with Andreas Gruber. Bad blood there already. And then the rumors that maybe he was Joseph's father and killed them in a rage over rejection or the scandal. He had an alibi, apparently, but the suspicion lingered for years. Never charged, though.
Right, his proximity, the history, the rumors. It all put him under a cloud of suspicion. Shows how easily blame falls on those close by in these situations, especially when secrets are involved.
Another idea. Escaped convicts or WWI deserters. Germany was in turmoil after the war, lots of displaced, maybe traumatized men around. Could desperate people have just stumbled on this isolated farm looking for food or shelter, and things went horribly wrong? There were reports of strangers seen in the area around that time, and the isolation made Hinterkaifeck seem like an easy target.
The psychology makes sense, potentially. Desperate men may be suffering from PTSD, capable of extreme violence. It's plausible. It offers an explanation without needing a personal link to the Grubers. Crime of opportunity.
Then there's the incest cover-up theory. Based on those pervasive rumors about Andreas and Victoria and Joseph's paternity, did someone, maybe another family member ashamed of the scandal, or someone close by kill them all to bury the secret, or maybe as some kind of twisted revenge, highly personal, very dark motive?
Deeply disturbing possibility, for sure.
And locally, you had the occult theory. Given how weird everything was, the noises, the maid quitting, the footprints, some people just thought it had to be supernatural, a curse, demons, something like that.
Understandable in a way. When something's that horrific and makes no rational sense, people grasp for other explanations. It shows the psychological impact on the community. But yeah, officially dismissed.
And finally, the robbery gone wrong theory. Because Andreas was known to be frugal, rumored to have cash hidden away. Maybe intruders came looking for money and it escalated. But the big problem with that one, valuables were apparently left untouched. Cash, jewelry, supposedly still in the house. So if it was robbery, they didn't do a very good job or got interrupted, or maybe money wasn't the point at all.
Exactly. That lack of theft really undermines the robbery motive for many people.
Later on, profilers tried to build a picture of the killer. Based on the evidence, they figured, probably someone familiar with the farm layout, knew the family, physically strong enough to overpower 6 people, methodical, patient luring them, staying afterwards. Maybe someone with a severe personality disorder. Psychopath, maybe. Given the cold-bloodedness, that chilling ability to stay there.
But despite all that, despite even a modern police review in 2007 using new techniques on old files, it's still officially unsolved. No killer identified, no charges. A stark reminder that sometimes the trail just goes cold. The evidence degrades, memories fade. It's why it's such a classic case study, the perfect, terrible storm of factors that allowed someone to get away with mass murder.
Hinterkaifeck's lingering shadow, legacy, and impact.
It's amazing, isn't it? Nearly 100 years later, and Hinterkaifeck still has this grip on people, not just in Germany, but around the world for true crime fans. The mystery just keeps pulling people in. You see it everywhere. Documentaries, books trying to crack the case like Lochner's work or Blass's. It even pops up in fiction sometimes. That German movie in 2009, Hinterkaifeck, brought it to a whole new audience.
Absolutely. The cultural impact is huge. And the actual site, even though the farm was torn down way back in 1923, people still go there, like a pilgrimage spot. True crime tourism, basically. Hundreds show up for tours sometimes, trying to connect with it, feel something on that ground. It speaks to how much we're drawn to these dark, unsolved stories. Hinterkaifeck gets mentioned in the same breath as, the Black Dahlia, Zodiac. It's cemented itself in that hall of infamy. And that detail about the killer staying, that adds a psychological horror that's pretty unique.
And it's not just popular culture, it's relevant professionally, too.
Mhm.
In forensics, like you said, it's a classic case study, a cautionary tale about messing up crime scenes, the need for careful evidence collection. Students still look at it and think, wow, if they'd only had DNA back then, or proper fingerprinting. It really highlights how far things have come.
Definitely. And in criminal psychology, it's used to explore motives, especially in family annihilations. Makes you think about rural crime, isolation, how personal conflicts can explode. For historians, too, it's this dark snapshot of Bavarian rural life in the 1920s. Social structures, community dynamics, how trauma gets processed or doesn't when there's no resolution. It's a rich, if grim, source for analysis.
Thinking about it more broadly, it makes you reflect on things still relevant today, like the vulnerability of isolated places, rural policing challenges, and those awful rumors about the family. It forces conversations about abuse, secrets, and how communities sometimes enable silence, with tragic results.
And that core question, what happens when justice just isn't possible? The case really digs into our need for closure, for answers when something terrible happens. Our desire to understand why is so strong, even a century on. Hinterkaifeck is this humbling reminder that sometimes we just can't know everything. Some mysteries might actually stay mysterious. It challenges our whole idea of resolution.
And the fascination doesn't stop. Remember that police academy class in 2007, reopening the case files, applying modern thinking, shows that drive to solve it is still there. Plus, you still get amateur sleuths dicking around, genealogists finding old connections, historians uncovering documents. People are still trying to piece it together, ensuring Hinterkaifeck's story isn't forgotten. Outro. So, yeah. Hinterkaifeck, after all this time, all the scrutiny, investigations, theories, it remains one of the most compelling, most heartbreaking cold cases ever. The brutality, those weird warnings beforehand, the lack of a clear motive, and that truly chilling idea of the killer just living there afterwards. It all continues to baffle, to disturb. It's like this dark stain on the Bavarian landscape, a story where the truth just got lost somewhere along the way.
While we always want those neat answers, maybe the real power of a case like Hinterkaifeck isn't just about finding the killer's name. Maybe it's more about what it forces us to confront. The fragility of life, the depths people can sink to, and our own kind of morbid fascination with the unknown. In a world overflowing with information, Hinterkaifeck really challenges us. Are some mysteries just meant to stay unsolved, forever pushing against our need for justice, for understanding, for closure? It makes you think, doesn't it, that maybe sometimes the shadows just win.